on to step number 19. We're going to start building the transmission. All sorts of fun stuff. I always like when we have bearings and gears. Makes me happy. What I've done is I've gone ahead and I think I've laid out all of my pieces and parts, including the plastic parts. And we'll find out soon enough if I got them all or not. Well, a couple things that I do want you to take note on. And the first one is that on the transmission half, we are going to be using transmission part B, which is the bulkier half. You'll see that there's a half that's got almost like a square box on it here, and another half that's just a cover. We're going to be using the bulkier half, which is -2. Also, if you take a look down on the directions for building the gear portion down here, it references a tiny little plastic bushing, and it says AX80051, but it fails to give us a part number on the tree, which is part number 4. So that's -4. We're going to break this up into a couple of little steps, and we're going to start at the top here. We're going to grab our slipper gear shaft, which is this unit right here, and it's got threads at the top, and it's got 2 holes in it. We're going to take our pin, which is 30162. It's a very, very small pin, and we're going to set it into the hole that is farthest opposite from the threads. Put that in there. And then we're going to grab our gear, which is a 20-tooth drive gear. And you'll notice that in one side is flat and the other side is a little groove for that pin to drop in. And we are going to slip this on from the bottom, according to the directions. Make sure that we seat the pin down inside of the groove. So that is this portion. I'm going to go ahead and set this aside. And let's see what we have next here. We are going to, I guess, assemble with the plastic gear, which is the AX810, and I don't think there's a dash number on here. It was actually not on a tree. It was in a bag with 2 gears and some other stuff. So this is the unit here, and you'll notice that there's a ridge on the inside. So what we're going to do is going to press 2 of our 5x10 bearings in, 1 on each side. When you're ready for replacement bearings, don't forget about FastEddyBearings.com. That's FastEddy bearings.com. All sorts of replacement bearings for you. Get those pressed in, and then the 5x18 shaft, which is metal, is going to go through the center, just like so. We're going to go ahead and set that aside. And we will start to build our main gear unit that goes inside. So where do we start? Let's start by grabbing the shorter of our metal ends. You have a short one and a long one. I'm hoofing this here, so I have not pre-built this yet. So we're going to see if I do this properly or not. We're going to take our gear, we're going to slide it over. Looks like it fits right inside. And I'm assuming we're going to spin that around until the 3 holes on here align with 3 holes inside the gear. I'm assuming that's where we're going to put our screws. From there, let's go ahead and drop in the little plastic grommet, which is 80051-4, which we discussed earlier. It looks like that just slides right in. It presses inside the little hole on the gear. You can see it right in there. And then what are we going to do next here? We're just following right along. We are going to take the top unit here and drop it down on. Guess there's no stud or anything in the center. So we're just going to drop that right on. Let's make sure our holes are aligned up. And the 3 holes are going to align all the way through. Kind of hard to see while I hold this together. And then we're going to use the 3 small screws to hold that in. Now it is metal to metal, so let's get out a little bit of, you have to set that down. Let's get out a little bit of Loctite here. Grab our wrench and put these little puppies in. See if I can get this all lined up again. There we go. The longer end here does not have threads in it, so we're going to put the screws in from the longer end first, and then they should thread in. There we go. Just going to put it until it touches, then repeat the process on the other 3 or the other 2. Pretty straightforward, just till it touches. Got one more. Then we'll just use a little star pattern and tighten them up so that we don't warp anything. Alright, so we have those 3 in. We'll tighten them up a little at a time. Don't want to strip them out. Okay. Now let's take our large bearing, which is a 15 by 21 by 4, and we are going to slip it over the longer end, and it's going to seat around this little shoulder right here. Let's go ahead and put that on, and it should press in until it's flush. That was pretty simple. Makes a whole lot of parts go together very quickly. Okay, now let's grab our transmission half, and with the bearing area or the longer shaft area, let's go ahead and drop that down inside and press that bearing in. Should go in just like we do with any moving part. Once you put it in, let's check for fitment and make sure that it's not binding. Now we are going to set the next portion in, which is this part that we built earlier with the shaft and the 22 tooth gear. Is that right? 22 tooth? Doesn't say. But we're going to drop that in. We're going to put it in the center. Make sure that the shaft pushes down into the transmission housing and it sits even with the gears. And again, we put in a moving part, so let's check for binding. Doing real good there. Now we are going to drop in this unit, and we need to put a bearing on the end. So let's go ahead and slip a bearing onto that end and drop that bearing down and seat it into the transmission housing. Well, before we move forward to step number 20, there's 2 things that we forgot to do. First one is to insert our bearings onto the top. We're going to take our larger one and seat it down. There. We're going to take our smaller one that we have left over and seat it right down over there. And the second thing that we forgot to do was to put grease inside of our transmission. You can use the supplied grease that came with your kit, or you can use some Team FastEddy, dog bone, and transmission grease. Just depends on what you want to use. We're going to use, for the transmission this time around, we're going to use the factory grease. And we're going to put some in on the gear here. Go ahead and spin it around. And just feed a little bit more in there until it's greased up. As you're spinning it around, it'll distribute grease through all the gears. You don't have to load it up, but you don't want to be stingy with it. All right, now we can safely move on to the next step.